Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Collective Spotlight. This is episode 38. I can't believe we're flying through these. It's almost been a year. We're coming up on the year anniversary. But I have a really awesome show lined up for y'all. Definitely two awesome creators, but we're kind of calling this an unofficial editors day because both of these guys, while writers, are very well-known editors in the indie industry. So without further ado, my first writer and editor works very much with Scout Comics, also worked with Behemoth a little bit. It is Andrea. Andrea, how do I say your last name?
Molinari.
Molinari. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
So we just had you in the store not that long ago signing your book, The Shepherd,
yes,
which was nonstop from Scout. And we just got a shipment in. I believe the official release date is next week, I think, through Diamond.
It's the 14th.
14th.
It was originally going to be the 7th, but I think our printer had some issues with COVID and it kind of set things back a little bit. So a few books were impacted.
So we have the full trade now that'll come out next week. Part of Black Caravan with Mr. Schmelke as well.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about The Shepherd and what people got in the first issue, and then what they can expect in the full-on trade.
Okay, so the first issue has really two component parts to it. One is a what we call so you do like ghost stories, and it's really a way of kind of introducing the character of the shepherd to people by kind of showing you him at work. Okay. It's a short 12-page story. It's the first time it's ever been published. The guys at Black Caravan, actually, it was their idea. And I was excited when they proposed it to me because I wanted to do this kind of all along. And anyway, Joseph Smolke and Rich Woodall, the two co-publishers for Black Caravan, suggested it. And I started thinking with Roberto, about my co-writer Roberto and my son, about what we would do for that. And we came upon the idea of, using some of our favorite mythology, which is the Egyptian mythology. And so that initial story, the 12-page standalone, involves Egyptian mythology and legends and ideas about it, the afterlife in the Egyptian religions. So that's kind of starting the story. And then the rest of the volume is really the origin story, for lack of better way of describing it, the origin story for the character of the shepherd. It kind of gets the ball rolling. And that's really what you can expect in the back half of the first issue. And then, of course, the rest of the volume that you find in the nonstop.
Nice, nice. So is your plan like how is the world of the shepherd have a possibility for, a second volume? Are there more issues that could be worked out in that world?
Yeah. In fact, it's funny you say that because the second volume just got solicited today for Diamond. So that's going to be out in, I haven't even released the cover on it because I didn't want to confuse the issue. I wanted to let this first volume drop before we send the second. But to answer your question a little bit more fully, is that we actually are working on 3 additional volumes beyond the second. So in other words, we've already got material that is completely written and in artistic process for volumes 2, 3, 3, 4, and 5. So yeah. So there's, all told, it's well over 600 pages worth of stories that are on their way. I expect you'll probably see the volume 3 out at the beginning to start to roll out in the beginning of 2022. Okay. Probably have a volume 4 in the latter part of that year. So yeah, we're already thinking in terms of 2023. So.
That's awesome. And now I know The Shepherd is a project that you had worked on for a long time before it had gotten to Scout and everything. You had self-published and everything. How long have you actually been working on The Shepherd and the universe there? Yeah,
well, we started writing it in June of 2011.
Wow.
And then it would have been the fall of that year. So late August, beginning of September, we started the actual artwork for that volume that you see in that the volume, the trade that you're seeing. So that work began in, as I said, in the fall of 2011. And we finished that in 14, and we started shopping it around to publishers. And, like many independent comic books, we had some flaws, and our main flaw was our lettering. Our lettering was not good. Is a very kind way of putting it. But I will say that it is now, as an editor, I realize that lettering is the most common problem for independent comic books. The good news is, if there is good news in this, is that it's the easiest and cheapest to fix. So we ended up having it relettered. We worked with an editor, and we ended up resubmitting it. And the funny part about it is we ended up submitting it to Caliber Comics, which we had sent it to back in June of 14. We sent it back to them. They were one of the ones that we sent it to again in December of 14. 2 days after I sent chapter 1 to them, they wrote back to me and asked if there was any more. I said, yeah, we've got the whole book finished. They said, can you send it to us? We sent it to them, and 2 days after that, we had a contract.
Awesome.
So yeah, so we ended up publishing in May of 2015 with Caliber Comics, and we did a 5-year contract with them. And we published the first 2 volumes, what will be the first 2 volumes with Scout.
Okay.
They were originally published as 3 separate volumes, but we've when we worked with Scout and with Black Caravan, we've decided that what was with Caliber, it was called Volume 2 and 3, that were Part 1 and Part 2 of a larger story. We've decided we're going to publish them together as one volume. Just, they belong together. They should be together. We don't want there to be any lapse in time. That once that drops, we want to be able to give you the entire story. So those books are being rolled out again with Scout, and then as of beginning of next year, it'll all be unpublished material. It'll all be brand new territory for us. So
awesome. So we're getting to the fresh stuff, the stuff that you've been waiting to get out there. Yeah,
we've been waiting for a long time, and we're very excited about it. The next volume is actually you meet in that first issue. You meet members of the shepherd's family.
Oh, okay.
While he's alive, he has 3 children. One of which passes away, and that's part of the main plot. Is he goes into the afterlife after his son, and he leaves behind a younger daughter and a young son. And those 2 characters become very important in the rest of the volume of Volume 1. But also, we decided in consultation, my son and I, we said, we really feel like these characters have potential themselves. So I don't want to do too much in the way of spoilers, but let's just say there are things that are revealed about his children that he leaves behind that lead to narrative expansion. And so Volume 3 is really all about them. And awesome. What happens with them. And there are 2 stories that are going to be part of Volume 3. One is called The Valentine, which is kind of their origin story, so to speak. And then we have a backstory that's a 1-issue, 1-shot called The Pit. And both those stories deal with the 2 kids that are left behind. And and then in Volume 4 and 5, it goes on with the traditional stories dealing with the shepherd and the adventures that he has in the afterlife. So
I'm noticing, and I've always, it's perfect to have the creator here, because the shepherd very much, and you mentioned it, has a little bit like Egyptian mythology in there and things like that. And I know it's a very deep in mythology type of book. Mm-hmm. Where do you see it sitting in that roster of Black Caravan books? Because a lot of the Black Caravan books, at least especially at launch, were horror books, in one way, shape, or form. And this one's a little bit different. How do you see this one landing in that imprint of Black Caravan?
Well, I do see us as horror, to be honest with you. It's a different kind of horror. And let me unpack that, what I mean by that. I have never been a fan of what I call dumb horror. Mm-hmm. Okay, and let me give you an example what I talk, and I'm probably going to step on toes here. I have no use for like Jason, Friday the 13th, the Elm Street Nightmare,
the slasher type of
slasher type. It's like, you have a serial killer on the loose. Let's order a pizza, and by the way, let's split up, and see if we can hunt this guy down ourselves, because you know, that's going to work well. It's just too predictable. It's too simplistic, and it's too, it's just too bland for me. It's not, you know, to me, it's like, that's just a blood and guts type thing. And it's like, you know, and I find it ironic because in a lot of ways, I think the audience actually cheers for the serial killer in those movies. You know, I honestly do. Because, and part of it is I think the main characters are just so dumb that you're just like, well, I think we're all doing a service by just eliminating these people.
Some Darwinism right there, right?
You know. So that said, the kind of horror that I'm interested in is really an exploration of what real evil is. And I want to be very clear about this. I am not interested in telling stories about demons. I'm not interested in telling stories about, you know, monsters, because what I really believe, and I think is actually much darker and much more frightening, is that the real evil can be found when you go home and look in the mirror. And that's not to say that the human person is evil by nature or anything, but all the evil, think about this, all the evil that is in this world is here because people made it possible. We are the ones who are responsible for all the evil, all of it. You know, it's our actions, every war that's ever been fought, every genocide that's ever been perpetrated, every rape, every person who starved to death while others looked on, every time that somebody has been unjustly murdered, like with this George Floyd trial. That evil is not perpetuated by some demon, some horned, you know, tailed, you know, goat-footed creature. That's a human being that did that. Yeah. You know? And so to me, what the Shepherd is really all about is exploring the darkness in the human person and really asking the question, is there a chance for redemption for that person? And I'll give you a spoiler. I do believe there is a chance for redemption. I believe that people do have a choice, that we can choose to be better, and that if we do fail, if we do make mistakes, if we do act in a way that is beneath our dignity, that we can make that right. We can in some way atone for the things that we've done. And it's so in a lot of ways, even though it's an exploration of horror, it involves a lot of hope in our story. So I would say, you know, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that maybe hopefully is a way of thinking about the Shepherd.
Well, and that was a perfect explanation because, you know, I think instead of the answer leading to more questions, you kind of knocked it all out there in once. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about, as you mentioned, you write this along with your son. What is that experience like? You know, I mean, I know people in general would love to do, you know, their passions along with their children, and you're actually getting a chance to kind of do that with co-writing a book.
Yeah, I would recommend it to anybody. I think it because what you're doing is you're creative together. You know, you're sharing your ideas, you're running, you know, it requires a certain level of fearlessness because you have to be prepared to kind of have your idea, you know, dismissed, or to have your idea say, well, you know, I'm not sure that that's going to work, and here's why. But it really is a great experience of discussion and debate, and really asking what we want as priorities for our, you know, for our story. What are we trying to get across? And, you know, kind of wrestle with that together, and then come out of that wrestling with something, you know, that's a concrete direction. We've debated about a lot of this stuff. I mean, he'd be the first one to tell you that, you know, there's definitely a dark side to the Shepherd, because the story, as you'll see, is very much rooted at the beginning anyway in his own desire for vengeance, his own sense, you know, of self-loathing for his own perceived failures as a father, and his anger at those who took his son from him, you know, and having to go through that process of looking in the mirror, so to speak, which is a very difficult thing to do for a person. But that's what that story really is about, is him looking in the mirror and not liking, coming to a point where he realizes he doesn't like what he sees looking back at him, and deciding that it has to change, that it has to be different than what it currently is, even if it costs him everything in the process, that somehow, you know, there has to be that redemption. So we've wrestled with that, you know, as co-writers, because, you know, when you deal with the question of, you know, you have a character that done something wrong, you know, the human question is always about punishment. You know, we always think about who to blame. Think about this. In today's society, associating and affixing blame are a very big thing. You know, to blame, who should be held responsible for this? And I think if we really explore that question, we'll see that there's a lot more responsibility to go around than we care to, you know, we like to push it off on somebody else, but I think that there's a lot more responsibility available for all of us to bear.
Well, and that's kind of where the domino effect comes from. You know, you doing something in line at your Starbucks visit very well could affect something, you know, way down the road, you know, or something like that. It's the very little things, you know, and that's why, you know, it just personal, as somebody who works in retail, you see people every day, you know, hundreds of people might walk through my store. And one thing I might say to somebody could very well lead to something further down. Most people don't think that way. They don't, you know, there's so much going on on a daily basis. But it's very true. I love how you're kind of, your book is not at all slice of life, but it's very grounded and humanized. And I love that about the way you're writing. Let me ask you, was it at all challenging to be a father working with your son while writing this book of, you know, trying to pinpoint, you know, the pain of this father who's lost his son? Were there any challenges there?
Well, I think, you know, it's that process of struggling to be honest about how you feel about things, because, you know, if you are a father yourself, one thing that you start to figure out is you start to have much more compassion for your own dad, you know, because when you're a teenage son, it's like, fuck dad. Dad doesn't know shit. Dad doesn't know shit. And as you get older, dad gets wiser. You'll notice that dad goes from being a complete moron to actually knowing some stuff. And then before you know it, you know, you're consulting with dad, you know, as your first choice of consultation. And so it's that kind of that ability as a father, I always thought this was important, is to be able to say to your son, you know, I screwed up. I overreacted. I shouldn't have said that to you. I apologize. That ability to do that, and to be able to kind of like in the course of writing this story, to be able to share what it's like to be a father, and then to hear him talk about being a son, of course, related to your own experience of being a son, and to really work together, discuss that dynamic, you know, because you'll see, I think if you read the story, you'll see that there is a certain generational component to the shepherd, because you'll see this as soon as you get to the second chapter of the story, that you have it in the afterlife. You have the, you know, the shepherd meets his own father. And so you see the dynamic going between the dad and his own father. And then you throw Val into that. So now you have this mix of generations, you know, and then what you find is that a lot of the same dynamic continues. So anyway, so just should mention this, my son, Berto, pull up a chair. Berto just actually got back from work in the gym. Danny, this is Danny from the collective. Pull up a chair here.
What's up, Danny?
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing all right, yourself?
Good, good. We were just talking to your dad about the Shepherd. I know he was in the store the other day. We just got the full trade paperback in, actually.
Cool.
And I actually had another question about the book. So you just announced that the solicit for what will be the volume 2 is kind of just hit. When are you guys expecting to have that out? And since it's something that you guys already kind of had in the canister, were there edits you guys went back and made? Like, how do you guys approach that? Like when it's getting re-put out?
Yeah, Path of Souls.
Yeah, so those did come out with Caliber first. So like you could probably find copies of those like on like Amazon or something like that. Like if you were determined to have them now, but they'll be coming out with Scout in what, like
the first issue will be out in August, and then the entire trade will be out in November. So, and to answer your question is, yeah, we are actually going to be doing some very significant. We actually took. The story deals with 4 characters, and one of the characters' story arcs is going to be completely redrawn by a new artist.
Oh.
So it is going to involve significant artistic change. We are very excited about what that's going to mean for the story. We just thought it was an opportunity. You know, it's the same thing with the addition of the Egyptian story is, you know, you have this opportunity to do something you had wanted to do, but didn't have the funds or the opportunity.
It's like, that's why the it's broken up like that, right? Because Joel lettered that story while you had Jacob letter your original.
Exactly.
So, are you guys hoping, or is there, I guess this could potentially, if you're allowed to say, are you guys working on potentially doing another like front end story the way you did in this volume, or was that kind of just for volume 1?
I would say that's for volume 1. There is already, you'll see in volume 2, there will be a front end story, but you won't see it till the trade.
Okay.
There might be back end stories though, because like we have one planned for the Valentine for sure.
We talked about that.
Okay. Well, I mean, then we've already covered that.
But actually, while I have him on here, I already asked your dad what it was like getting to co-write with his son, you know, something that I know like tons of parents really want to be able to do, something that they're passionate about with their kids. On the other foot though, what was it like for you getting to co-write with your dad?
So Dad and I have always gelled pretty well. Like you know, obviously I wasn't here while you described it, but I could probably guess at most of the things that he said. We had like kind of like minor disagreements. One of the ones that like, you know, we sometimes touch on when we had asked this question is kind of like whether or not the characters kill. Like, you know, kind of early on, that was discussion. Then we had kind of like a debate going back and forth. Like at the time, I was definitely like for it. I was like 100% like, absolutely. Of course they kill. Like these are bad guys. Like they just get wasted. And Dad was like, no. And then we kind of like went over this back and forth. And like, eventually I came around to Dad's like way of thinking that they shouldn't. And now I actually like really strongly agree with him, that we shouldn't. But most of the time we're kind of on the same page where like one of us will float an idea and then it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that sounds really good. We're going to go with that. I would say like surprisingly well, like we gel surprisingly well. Cause like I wouldn't like, I don't really see myself kind of like cooperating like this on other projects. Like it's kind of like for really almost anything else I would want to put my hands on, it would be like kind of like my artistic vision. And then like whatever artist that I'm working with, I'd be willing to, you know, kind of like hash things out with them because they've got something to add. But like, am I really interested in kind of like, I don't know, like another narrative opinion? I don't know. Not really, I guess.
Well, you should tell him, I'll just introduce this for you, is that one of the things that Roberto is working on in addition to The Shepherd is that he's actually writing a trilogy of like D&D type fantasy novels.
Oh, wow.
That's a good way of describing. Why don't you tell him?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's like, so like you can call something high fantasy, but that's such a like wide genre that it's kind of like hard to tell. Cause like, you know, that's anywhere from like Lord of the Rings, which has magic and has gods and stuff like that. But they're kind of like a little bit more muted, like in terms of like what it seems like the magic is capable of.
Okay.
And then, like Magic the Gathering, which is still high fantasy, and that's like you got dudes that can just straight up rip worlds in half. Really, I'm definitely leaning towards kind of like the more Lord of the Rings type magic, where it like exists and like sometimes, you know, it like can be, you know, kind of important, but it's not like, you know, not like that drenched in fantasy, like, or drenched in magic, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I like in my mind, I'm like what you're describing as drenched in fantasy kind of is like that Onward movie with Pixar. Like that one was heavy and everybody uses magic and everything, but like the way you're describing it, a little bit more like you said, Lord of the Rings, or honestly almost like a period piece that uses magic in a sense, but it's not entirely, you know, we're not talking Lord of the Rings. Am I kind of right there?
I would say that that's probably fair. I actually did like a ton of research on medieval France. And like it actually like it kind of even like influenced the way that I kind of like introduced the concept of orcs, right? So like orcs have been kind of like a you know, like there's a little bit of controversy in kind of how they're portrayed and stuff like that, whether or not it's racist, whatever. But kind of like the time that I spent learning about medieval France, the way that orcs make sense to me to be you know, kind of like portrayed is like literally as Vikings. Like orcs dress and use kind of like that cultural what do you call it? Like the cultural dress.
Yeah,
of Because if you're talking about kind of like 7th through 9th century France, you're really talking about like kind of like the main like antagonists are basically going to be like Vikings if you're in northern France, maybe like some Magyars or something like that coming across from like Central Europe, and then kind of like Islamic pirates. But like of the three aesthetics there, I kind of like the Viking thing better.
Yeah. So one thing I'm noticing from having talked to both of you guys is you guys, it seems you love your mythology, you love your history, and both of those things clearly show in your projects that you guys have done so far and the projects that you're working on. But I have to ask, and I always ask everybody here, and it's awesome that I have two kind of generations of creators. What were your, and maybe not just comic book influences, but your pop culture influences? Like when you sat down to write The Shepherd or thinking of ideas, what were some of the influences, not necessarily that bled into the book, but that got you into wanting to be a creative like this for both of you guys?
Go for it.
I mean, one that like, I could use this as like an example that's not relevant to necessarily, I mean, it is relevant to The Shepherd, but kind of like less like blatantly is the myth of air, like Plato's myth of air.
Okay.
There's
I don't know if that's a pop culture reference though.
Yeah, I mean,
but it makes sense.
It's influence.
Yeah,
it's an influence. Like I would say, like pop culture, like The Crow for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and that was for both of us. Like, regarding The Shepherd, The Crow, like 100%, that's an influence.
We literally have that graphic novel on the shelf, not 5 feet away from us.
By the way, that's if you haven't read The Crow, it's a banger.
Oh, absolutely. And The Crow just recently got like re-released like a year or two ago. And I remember it found a whole new fandom. It's one of those things that generations occasionally miss it. And us as retailers and, distributors need to remind people every once in a while.
There's a certain subculture that particular book and like the movie, whatever, is always going to appeal to. So like, if you just release that generationally, like people would just keep finding it. Like, you'd have the Gerard Ways of the next generation reading The Crow, 100%.
Absolutely. And the movie, while it doesn't hold up well graphically, still story-wise can absolutely still be watched and it resonates.
Yeah, I would say other pop culture things for me, Doctor Strange, most definitely, especially the planar journeys and the conception of like alternate worlds and realities that are, that are kind of simultaneously existing and then passing between those realities. That's very much, especially when you read our second volume, if you see that you have realities that are existing at the same time in the same space, they're like phased out from each other, but in the same space. So I would say definitely that type of stuff. Those would be two of the bigger ones.
Yeah, and that's awesome how it's not the same stuff for you guys. You get what I'm saying? Like you're with a little bit of cosmic stuff with Doctor Strange and everything, and then he's got some stuff, and you could tell that all bleeds out in some way, shape, or form, whether little or a lot, into The Shepherd. Actually, I realized that we talked mostly just about the book, which is awesome. I have two more questions for you. One being, why does this guy look a lot like you? Was that done on purpose?
Well, it's actually based on a cosplay photograph. So I gave, he needed a reference. Luca needed a reference. So I gave him, I'd done, there's a photographer in Central Florida, Greg Rice, who you see at a lot of conventions. And he actually did a photo shoot with me. He does wonderful photo shoots and does them for free. And he does a lot of cosplayers. And we actually went to a cemetery. Trying to remember, I'd have to think about where that cemetery was, but it was outside of Orlando, and took pictures. And so that is actually one of those. It's actually based on one of the pictures. So
and he's got the goatee down, like it's down to a T, man.
So again, like coming late, like I don't know if this got covered, but did we address that this is based off of a nightmare that Dad had?
No. Tell me.
Yeah. So literally, the whole thing was based off of a nightmare that Dad had about me dying of a drug overdose. So that was like when I was like 16 years old, and it was like totally unjustified because at the time, like I wouldn't touch anything. So
when I asked you about that, how did you leave that out, Andrea?
Well, it is in the book. There is an essay in the trade. You'll see about that. But in a nutshell, I did have a nightmare, very graphic nightmare. And what was very different about two things. One is that it wasn't like just this moment of him dying, but it was really him dying and us, it was like being on a conveyor belt, experiencing the aftermath, the funeral parlor, the graveside, the aftermath, months of me not being able to work, be able to cope with things, and then hearing him calling out from the other side. And it was like, I describe this to people, it's like being strapped into a roller coaster that you don't want to be on, and you're going to be on this until it gets to the end. And I woke up, I'm covered in sweat, I'm upset. And my wife was like, what is going on with you? And I said, I don't think you want to know. And she said, well, now I kind of do. So I told her, and her reaction was like, I hate you. Why would you tell me that? I'm like,
I told her she didn't want to know.
It's like, I didn't want to tell you about it. I was very upset. It took a couple days before I finally worked up enough courage to tell him about it. And his whole reaction was, Dad, that's so cool. And I'm like, not cool, man. This is like 180 degrees. This would be cool. This is on the opposite side of the spectrum of cool. And, but from the very beginning, his whole thing was that we need to do something with this. We can do something about it. And as I said, we eventually wrote it in June of 11. But, I've been sitting on it for a while. I really wanted it to go away. But what really made it very different as a dream is that it stayed with me. Yeah. It really did. And there are really only a couple things that we changed from the dream. And I'll say the staff was one of them, the object, kind of centralizing that power of the shepherd into an object. That's one of the things that we adapted for the book, because in the dream, it was like coming out of me.
Okay.
And then the other thing was there's a creature that is going to be introduced in the second issue. And that creature takes the shape of a wolf. But in my dream, it was kind of like this monster just outside your peripheral vision where it's there, but you never actually see it. Oh. And that it's always lurking and present. You can feel it there, but every time you turn, it's gone. And you turn your head and it's back. You can feel it. It's kind of like you can almost feel its breath.
You felt the presence, but yeah.
And obviously for a comic book, you need to have something concrete. So we really spent a lot of time. That was one thing I remember when, trying to figure out how would we kind of personify that.
There were some iterations that we saw kind of like while we were still scouting for like what artists we were going to use that we saw that were pretty fucking raw. Like we want honestly the best takes of the the creature that we're talking about are like have kind of like a mix of kind of like the wolf aspects and almost like person-like aspects. Almost like a werewolf, I would say. Okay.
Well, see, now I fully understand where the horror Black Caravan comes. So now I'm all in. Now I get it. But guys, thank you so much for coming on. We were able to do the whole 30 minutes on Just a Shepherd. I didn't even have to go into your editing work. But Andrea also is a huge editor at Scout. He's edited The Recount, Rabid World, Sweet Downfall, a ton more that I have on the shelf. But today we're talking about The Shepherd, which you guys both co-wrote. We have signed copies actually still of issue 1 from when Andrea was here. And we have the trades that will hit. Street date is next Wednesday, but I believe word from David Byrne and Scout is that we can sell these now. So if anybody's stopping by and wants to grab one, we have them. Beautiful David Mack cover. Yes. But thank you so much, guys, for coming on. I'll definitely have you guys on again as we get to the volume 2 at the end of the year. But best of luck with the book. I love what you guys are doing, and thank you for coming on the show, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that was Andrea and Roberto, I think. The Shepherd, volume 1 is officially out. We have the full volume. We have a couple copies, and we do still have signed copies of the first issue, which was nonstop through Scout. My next guest, because we were gonna, it's an editor show. Editors can write, editors can edit. My next guest is Chuck. Chuck, are those the pink? Are those the cat ears? What are we doing? I can't hear you, Chuck. Are you muted?
I'm muted to all fuck, yeah. 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 No cat ears, but just this is the pink power right here.
I like it. So, Chuck, our people here at the store, our customers might not know you as well as the guys that I typically bring on here because we don't have Belial yet. But half of the books on our collective initiative shelf were edited by you.
A good chunk, yeah.
like more than half, I think, because we got Travis Gibb on there, we got John Head, we got more than half. But I'm going to start with talking about you worked on Cthulhu Invades Oz.
Yes, I did.
And you are actually going to be coming down with Wendy and I believe Stoney Williams even as well. A little taste of Oklahoma. Coming down May 1st for our signing because of good old Cthulhu. Can you tell me a little bit about your story in this?
Yeah, so I got to do the Scarecrow.
Yes.
And what was funny was Travis and I are very tight. We're really good buddies. He and I have very similar ideas when it comes to story creation and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, whenever he'll go for a drive and whatnot, he'll give me a ring and we will chat about our take on the industry and things that we're seeing and all that kind of stuff. So I was one of the first people kind of on Cthulhu Invades Oz. And I remember when he was batting around some of the names, I was like, okay, I guess I have to do my research because I really need to find out about some of these characters because obviously you're going to want to save the big boys for the names. And the more I got into it, the more this twisted tale of the Scarecrow got into my head. And I just thought, how fucked up would it be if you were the most intelligent person basically on a planet and to realize you didn't have a chance. Like, victory is not even in the cards. What the hell do you do? And so I really played with that. And so mine's actually cut into two pieces. The first is him going to find the information, and the second is him dealing with the fact that they don't have a chance. What can he even do? And mine, I think mine was one of the more twisted and messed up of the stories. I really, and I'm not normally a horror guy, so when I do go horror, I try to go very psychological. So that's what I did. And I remember actually Greg Anderson Alisi reading my script because we were doing some he wanted to use one of my characters and I was going to check out his because I just I dig his work so much. And he was like, did that really just happen? And I was like, yeah, dude, he's like, that's fucked up. I'm like, yeah, thank you. That's what I was going for. So yeah, man, that's where that's coming from.
Dude, that is awesome. And so did you ask Travis Gibb if you could do the Scarecrow, or did he approach you? Because I know he, especially with these anthologies with like Wonderland and everything, the way that the people get the characters is very, first come, first serve, and he doesn't really like letting people do two stories featuring the same character. So did he approach you, or did you kind of pitch it to him?
I kept trying to find something that I thought would work, and that Scarecrow story just kept hitting me. And finally I was like, look, I'm going to pitch this to you. If you have someone better, that's fine. And I pitched it to him, and he was like, dude, that's messed up. Yeah, okay, let's do it. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, I really expected a little more fight, and even to be told no. And I was like, okay with that. But it had gotten to the point where I at least had to make the pitch because it was solidifying in my mind so much. And so I pitched it to him, and he's like, yeah, man, that's a really cool idea. Let's do it. All right, great. And actually, originally, it was just going to be an 8-page story. And he said, no, cut it into 2, separate it through the book, and it'll be interesting. And I was like, and that was his idea, I believe. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. And so that's what we ended up getting to do. And I'm really excited. I'm always interested to hear anyone who's read it and what they think.
Well, one of the things I think is really cool about that story, and I need you to talk me through your process, like how this came about. You mentioned how, like, what if you write it as if, what if he, you're the smartest guy in town, and you realize, oh my God, well, the Scarecrow is the one that needed a brain. So, how did you kind of mold this into, you know, the guy who always needed a brain now is quote unquote, you know, the smartest guy in the room.
Well, I mean, he ends up getting the brain, and instantly, you know, as soon as he gets his brain, he starts talking about like Pythagorean theorem and all that kind of stuff. So I envisioned him as very intelligent, and he ends up in the books, he ends up becoming an advisor to Princess Ozma.
Okay.
Or to Queen on Ozma. So I was like, okay, man, like obviously he's super smart. So I really just felt like if you were quote unquote dumb your entire life and then suddenly you found that logic, I feel like you would really lean into that and really play heavily off of that and nurture that side of you, because he finally found that thing that was that made him whole. And so to me, I really just felt like, yeah, he would read all the time, and you know, his first thought is to go to a library. Like that's the first thing he does. So yeah, I really just felt like I guess I never really thought about it, but I guess even like for myself, I didn't come into being a comic creator until later in my life, until my late 30s. And so now that I'm in it, I'm very much in it. I'm, you know, like reading and learning, and I have a show where I try to get people on to explain things so that you know, I can be better and the listeners can be better. And so I feel like I leaned into that. Why wouldn't he do the same?
Oh, I like it. I like it. You put a little bit of yourself in the character while, you know, doing a deep dive too. I like that. I like
Thank
that,
you.
man. So, I mentioned it at the beginning. So Chuck does have his own book as well. He doesn't just edit and do favors for Travis Gibb. So the book is called Belial. Can you tell us a little bit about Belial, so that way when people are knocking down my door to get it in the store, I can be like, yeah, I'm going to bug Chuck about it.
Well, and guys, I will be there on May 1st, and I'll be leaving some copies behind for sure. Because
My man.
For those of you guys who can't be there on the 1st, I don't want to do that, so I'll sign some and leave them behind for you guys. So don't worry about that. Belial is about the original creator of hell. He's actually mentioned in a lot of historical texts and whatnot, Dante's Inferno, all that kind of stuff. And so the story was brought to me by my partner, Sean Barbour, who was my inker for my first book, Welcome to the Void. And he came to me and he said, I have this really cool idea. I'd love it if you thought about it. And as soon as he pitched me the idea of the original creator of hell and trying to take it back from Satan, I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. And I instantly like blocked it down into 4 or 5 issues. I had, you know, like I had a treatment written out, and he was like, sounds like we got a series here. And I was like, yeah, we got a mini series here. Like that's how I envision it. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And then as I started writing it, I realized like every hell book is the same. Like it's all evil and dark and dripping. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we've come to expect. But I wanted someone to pick this up and be like, okay, this is definitely a hell book, but this is a hell book like nothing I've seen before. And so I, being someone who is very infused with comedy and who has worked with comedy an awful lot, decided I was going to make it a comedy as well, like an action adventure comedy. And so I very much leaned into that. I gave him a little imp partner by the name of Link, who also is taken from actual history. His origins are in in medieval English history, and he is just this little shit disturber who has complete and utter no fear of anything, to just like a ridiculous point. And so he is Belial's little buddy, and Belial basically is the former creator of hell, and he now, because hell isn't his, he owns this shitty bar. And basically he just hangs out at his piece of shit bar, and eventually decides, no, I've had enough of this shit. Hell is going exactly to where it is in a handbasket, and I'm gonna fucking fix this. It's gonna be mine again. And so he has to when hell was taken from him, his powers were divided amongst the 4 horsemen. So he has to kill all 4 horsemen, get his powers back, and then go after the after Lucifer. So we've got that setup of him each issue taking on 1 or more horsemen to get us to that final 4th issue of taking on Lucifer.
Dude, that is awesome. And tell me how, with something so dark, you kind of get a chance to blend in the comedy, you know? And I know that there's tons of movies that do it. Is there extra challenges in trying to do it in a comic book?
There are, because you only have so much space. You know what I mean?
Bro, you can do 9 panels like every page, dude.
You could. Who the hell would do that though? But I mean, it's just because you only have so much space. Yeah. And actually, I feel like it really kind of blended it in really well with the 2nd issue, because we have a lot of comedy in the background that's happening, so that even while the foreground you have this twisted story and this serious emotional beats and whatnot that are happening, we can have comedy going in the background, so you can be both laughing and learning and kind of enjoying it all sort of in layers at the same time. So it is kind of a delicate balance that you will probably see the difference between issues 1 and 2, and kind of how we're getting the feel of that and how that's coming together. So yeah, man, it was something that definitely we had to think about.
Yeah, because like I know I always things that we take for granted in media in general, they're done sometimes a lot easier in movies and film and TV than in a comic book. Our friend Jonathan Hedrick the other day, I was telling him in Recount 2, he has a phenomenal car chase scene, and I'm like, those aren't easy to do in comics because nothing moves, everything is a still image. So I always love when you guys take some things that are commonly done in movies and film and try to get it done in a comic book, because I know there's challenges in every one of those things. Chuck, you're also, like I mentioned, an editor that, I mean, gosh, I don't know how you find the time to edit all the books that you edit. But tell the people a little bit what exactly a comic book editor does, because you're not just copy editing, right? You're not just making sure words are spelled correct.
No, and that's the crazy thing about editing in comics. There's so many different things. So usually when I'm talking to someone, they'll say, I need an editor. And I'm like, what do you actually need? Like, what do you need me to work on? Because most of the time, a lot of them is just like, I need a proofer. I need someone to proofread it and make sure. But, they also want the story beats, pacing, dialogue, art direction. To be able to look and have another eye. I'm not an artist, but I can look at the art and tell you, like, this doesn't work, or this angle isn't working because it symbolizes, different things, depending on the angle and all that kind of stuff. And so even, like I said, pacing, lettering, things like, why is the tail pointed at his shoulder? His shoulder's not speaking. Let's move that. Why there's way too many words in this particular panel. Let's say you're someone who loves to use a lot of panels, like 9 panels, but then you have like 50 words in each panel. It's like, no, that's not doable. You're not going to be able to see any of the amazing art that's happening because it's all just going to be bubbles. So at that point, you kind of have to go, no, we got to trim this down. We have to make this work. You have to kind of understand that you can only sort of fit so many words on a page.
Now, especially for indie books, especially for indie books, these things a lot of times are passion projects for people, things they've been working on forever. How do you, because obviously there's a professionalism, there should be a professionalism all around, both you as an editor, them as creators, but people are passionate about things. How do you make sure, to not, when you have to make a suggestion that maybe, they're not going to like, but it's for the best of the book. How do you approach that?
Well, what's nice about working with, sort of like hobbyists and creators, creator-owned stuff, is that I will tell them right away, look, everything I tell you is a suggestion. You could be paying me my page rate and the whole time telling me, nope. If you want to pay that money and just tell me no all the time, cool, I'll accept the money. Like, I don't give a shit. It's your book. So what I say is, at least fucking listen to what I'm saying. Like consider the point before you even go to argue it. Just say, like if I come to you and I say, look, man, this scene is not necessary, and you're in love with that scene. and I go, man, this scene is not necessary. And you go, no, 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 it has to be there. No, chill out. Think about what the book would be like without that scene. Doesn't matter that you love it. Doesn't matter that it matters. What is lost in the book without that scene? Or is there a way that we can change that scene to make it more important or something? You know what I mean? So I'll just tell them, consider it. The best question any editor can ever ask is just why? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? And that why is so important, because if the answer is it's cool or I like it, those are shitty answers.
Yeah.
And I'll always tell them that's a shitty answer. Give me a better answer. Because what you really want is you want me in your corner going, yes, that's perfect. That needs to be there. Yeah. We need to make that happen. So get me excited about whatever that is. And if I don't think it's cool and if I don't think it's important enough for the book, will your fans? Because you're not just here to kind of jerk it and be like, oh man, I'm doing this for me. Like, that's nice, but you want other people to like it too. And I am that first fan, that first voice who's going to be able to look at it and say, this works or this doesn't, man.
Yeah. Because I can imagine it being tough when you're creating something that's entirely, I mean, heck, I had to do just one page in Cthulhu and it was like, you know, I'm my brain is going crazy, but I can imagine you're working on a 32-page comic. It's your first comic, and kids, you know, and I say kids, I mean, you know, anybody under 30 really, get excited. You know, I mean, the idea that you're about to go to Kickstarter and publish a book, that can get really not overwhelming, but you know, it could give you some rose-colored glasses, I guess. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think it's good that there's editors out there, because sometimes I think people could probably put too much of themselves in the project. You know, like. Yeah. Try to make it too autobiographical when it's not supposed to be.
Yeah. And, you know, what I try to tell them every time is I want to give you suggestions, and I want to give you often the question why is so good because it does not infuse any of me into the book. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's your book. I'm not interested. I make my own fucking books. I don't need to do that with your story. So let's still make this yours. But let's both understand that we're trying to make this the best version of your book, your story that we possibly can. And so by asking the whys and by getting them to consider, you know, the purpose for doing things and why things are working or not working, then we can do that. And so, you know, because I have to remind people all the time, they're like, the imposter syndrome is so huge, and they'll be like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, you're not fucking Alan Moore. You're not writing The Watchmen. All right. You're writing your book. Alan Moore wasn't writing, you know, the people that he was excited.
He wasn't trying to write New Gods when he wrote Watchmen, you know, like, yeah,
exactly. And he was trying to do his own thing. So just focus on your shit. Be the best. We just want your voice to be the best version of itself. That's all we're interested in. We're not looking to all this other media and all this other shit. That stuff doesn't matter.
So Chuck, your better half, Wendy, is also a creator. Mm-hmm. And you being an editor and an overly enthusiastic comic guy, how does that work with having two creatives in the house? One especially being an editor such as yourself.
So she helps with mine. She's an excellent proofer. Okay. I'm grabbing something from her right now. So what is nice is I've been in the business longer. I've been working at it longer. And so she tends to give me some space. Mm-hmm. But also I take her thoughts seriously, and what she has to say matters. So I actually find that we work really well together because her and I we actually met as writers together on the internet. She was here in Texas. I was in Canada. And so we both very much respect each other. And what's neat is that we have very different styles of writing. Hers is very descriptive and mine is very story oriented. Yeah. So when it comes to descriptions, I shut the fuck up. Like, I just, cool, go ahead, you know, do what you're going to do. And I let her go to town. And when it comes to story, she kind of does the same with me, where she just goes, okay, I know that this is your place. Go ahead. So I think we just have so much mutual affection and belief in the other person so much that there's no real fighting where that's concerned. And actually, this is something I got for her for Christmas 2019 because we didn't realize 2020 was going to be such a shit show.
Yeah.
So she's trying to write her own book, and it's happening right now. And we have a piece in. Are we allowed to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I was. So I didn't. I wasn't sure if. Yeah, but yes, we can absolutely talk about it. That was kind of the segue I was trying to make there.
So we have a piece from her story that is going to be in the Collective comic magazine, and this is from her story, Viscarian Tales. And what I did was I got her this. I actually commissioned this piece as a variant cover for her book. And so I said, look, you deserve, you're going to have the cover of your choice, how you want it. I just wanted to get you a variant for Christmas because everyone kind of, I know that the first thing that makes you feel like you're a real comic creator is art. And she was struggling to get that art and to finish her script. And I felt like she needed that nudge, that push to say, this is happening. And so I made this. We got the trade dress on there and everything and got it all. Like I even commissioned the logo and everything just to make it all feel real. And I was like, look, if you don't like it, we can change it. And actually, she ended up liking it, luckily. But I did that just so that she'd really feel it. And sure enough, she finished that. She finished the other two scripts in the miniseries. And so we're building it up. And she ended up doing a short story, which now we're adding in with you guys. So yeah, man, she's just moving.
And I actually have one. I don't know if I think I've teased it here and there, but I actually have one of the covers that will be a stretch goal there. And I mean, we're setting our campaign up to absolutely hit stretch goals within the first couple days. But yeah, we did a Justice League homage there from the movie poster. So her character is bottom right there, and we got Bishop from Voodoo Nation's top right. In the middle, we got Harry from Jonathan Hedrick's Capable.
Yeah.
Bottom left is the Jogger from Final Growth with David Galliano. And then top left is Megan Danaher, who is she works with us. She's been with us for a couple months, actually almost a year now. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But she's got a short story in there. She's going to school for literary and wants to actually potentially be an editor. So I think this is awesome. And you guys have gotten a chance to work together a little bit. But
I got to work with Megan, and I got to work on the first script for Final Growth. So my fingerprints are all over that thing.
and I think you weren't officially the editor on Voodoo, but Travis told me you definitely got to make some passes over that. He definitely let you look at that.
So no, not on Voodoo. I've been able to work on almost everything else. He very specifically actually kept Voodoo away from me.
Oh.
He wanted that to be the one thing that I got to enjoy as a fan.
You know, how nice
and
of
that was
Travis
cool, yeah.
Kid. Isn't Travis just everybody's favorite? Super nice.
He's a good dude. He and I have worked on so many things, like just as buddies, we'll show each other stuff off. Like, I didn't let him look at Belial until it was Belial 2 until it was done.
Oh, okay.
I did the same thing as he did with. I'm like, okay, great. You don't get to see it till it's done. You're gonna pull that shit on me. I'm gonna do the same to you. So I sent it to him. And what's great is that we both get to go, that was really good, but. And we get to because we both, respect and love each other so much that it's like, okay, here's where I think you could have worked in some things, and so I feel like we're constantly trying to make each other better. And there's never a point where I'm like, fuck Travis, what a dick.
Well, no, it's what's the word? It's like
mutual respect.
Yeah, it's like mutual respect and everything like that, man. And it's like, and you guys, I mean, have worked together on so many great things. And again, like I said, Chuck, you've edited so many of the books on our collective initiative, even from guys not like Travis. You did Ungodly Champions. What was it? Is it Shane Morrison? Shane Morrison. Yep. So he, and I know he's got other projects in the works too. You did Cat Dad and Supermom with Bobby Gregory. Yep. So that's on our shelves. I mean, Chuck, we don't have Belial on the shelf. Chuck's name isn't the first name on any of the books right now, but his name is on like 30.
That's right. Freak Show Night is another one I got to work on with John Hedrick.
Which actually we are doing a store exclusive cover for And John's going to be here tomorrow with the artist, which we did, Hoyt Silva, it's the first time getting to work with Hoyt. He did Last Stop with Trey Walker. He's worked with Scout and everything. But the dude's out of Georgia, and we said, hey, man, can you do a cover for us? And we'll fly you down. Granted, he's driving down. He's crazy, man. But yeah, man, I'm really excited for that one, too, because, we love John. John's been here 6 times in the last, 4 months.
Well, and Collective, what do you guys call yourselves? The Collective or Collectivites? What are the fans called?
The collective community, bro.
Right.
And when you get here on May 1st, there's a great story about that. There's a great story about that. But yeah, community's in the name of the store. And granted, I wasn't here when the rebranding happened or anything. But I mean, it almost sounds like it's made for some sort of what would the word be, moniker. But we didn't put collective in the name just for shits and giggles, for lack of a better term. It's literally part of the DNA here. The customers, we only made it to where we've made it right now because of what our customers were able to help us do during the shutdown. And I think that goes for any comic store.
Well, for those of you guys out there who are watching, if you want to raise the price of those books by a quarter or two, bring them out to me on the 1st. I'll sign anything and everything that comes by. I don't care. I've got multiple Sharpies and they've all got your names on them. I'll gladly, so just, anything you see that has my name on it, I don't care. Bring it by. I'll sign it all gladly. I'm excited to. If you buy something off the shelves and my name's on it, I'll do it right there. I have no issue. You can draw
stick figures, right? You got 2 arms and 2 legs you can draw on there?
Yeah, and I have my own little symbol, actually, that I draw on every single book.
There we go.
I want to turn it into a stamp one day, but yeah, I have a symbol.
Like so you'll get all of it. At Disney. I don't sign. I just stamp your thing. And
my signature is so shit ugly that I've had a symbol basically since the 90s. And actually when a good buddy of mine, he's been friends of mine since we were 12, and he saw me showing off something I'd worked on. He's like, you still use that symbol? And I was like, dude, honestly, I had to, it just, my signature is so terrible.
Dude, I'm right there with you. Ever since I don't have my wallet on me. First time I got my driver's license, age 16, the first real time I had to sign anything that mattered, I sign it. And it's just a scribble, and for 16 years, I just had a scribble. And then I have to thank Matt Knowles, because after the whole fiasco with the 9 panels on my one page, he called me Danny 9 Panels. And I'm like, man, I'm going to sign the books Danny 9 Panels. And I'm like, it's just going to be a D, a 9, and a P on the other end of the 9. So now I have what looks like a real signature, but it literally is just a D, and a 9 and a P. Yeah, Steven thinks it might look a little like
it looks like a peen. Yeah. It does look like a peen.
We'll be everybody. I'll be signing anybody's. If anybody wants to see it, I have a brick in here, so I can totally sign their Cthulhu Invades Oz as well on May 1st.
Yeah, if you guys want a dick on your brick, he'll draw it.
But Chuck, so you'll be down along with Wendy and Stoney on May 1st. We'll definitely have an event page actually going out real soon, so everybody can let everybody know. But tons of signed books. It'll be an opportunity to get probably the most or second most signatures on a Cthulhu Invades Oz book. I think Travis might have had the first one down in Melbourne, but we're going to get up there. We're trying.
But a lot of it, me, Stoney, Wendy, Wendy worked on the book too. She proofed it. Yep. So man, those are signatures that, especially for you Floridians, are going to be hard to get. Yep. So that's a really good one.
Canon sign all of our copies already. So the one person who's on the West Coast already has their signatures on there. So we're going to have a lot. We are going to have a lot.
When I have those special creator version, that beautiful black one, and we're bringing ours so that we can get everyone to sign them. Oh yeah.
I'm bringing mine. Now we're all just bragging. But
you're gonna have to sign my brick, homie.
We're also gonna have Kyle Willis here. I think Travis told me we're gonna get Kyle, who did the art on this cover. He also he's out of Jacksonville. Great guy. He's worked with Dustin Burnell as well. Who I think I said that name right. But Kyle Willis, I'm excited to have down. So yeah, man, May 1st is our grand opening here. Tons of Cthulhu Invades Oz creators. Steven will be here, kind of sitting at a table signing because he's in there too.
What's up, buddy?
We're told we're allowed to be creators on first, so
We're allowed to be creators. Oh no, we're actually not allowed to be creators. We're fired. We got fired. But before I let you go, Chuck, Jennifer did ask. She said, "Do you do coaching?" So I guess in terms of like editing and creating books, do you help? Can people hire you on? I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely I do. Yep. Feel free to track me down, Chuck Pineau on Facebook. You can definitely find me on through the collective. They'll gladly send you my way. Twitter at Chucky Pin. Yeah, man, hit me up. Even, you know what? A lot of times if it's just like some advice, it'll just be you and I chatting. But if you really want some like serious in-depth stuff, absolutely. Also, every Tuesday night I have a show that's on YouTube. It's on my channel, Chuck's Raw Reviews, and it's called Chuck's Shop Talk. And I talk with major comic creators and whatnot to get into how their processes and how they make it. And actually, tonight I have the Buddy Scalera on the show.
Yeah, that's why I was hoping I could get you because I'm like, I know Chuck's got stuff later tonight too. So I'm glad you were able to make it on.
Oh yeah, man, dude, for you, I'll push the show back a little bit, right? Buddy. You can wait. 9 Panels needs me. Dude, just chill out over there.
Dude, I don't know. I'll commission the shirt, but I just need a shirt with you and Jerome, and it's just gonna say my 2 favorite Canadians, and that's it, dude. Like, you guys are it. I'm in. I'll get commission.
I'm in. Hell yeah. I'm in, and I'll buy that shirt too. I'll wear it.
We'll sell at least 3 copies. 1 to me, 1 to you, 1 to Jerome. Right? We're good.
That's it. I'm in. I'm so in, man. You've already got my money.
I'm in. I love it. So, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on. Chuck will be here May 1st with the Cthulhu Invades Oz crew. We'll have some Belials when he comes in as well, and he's edited tons of things. Honestly, Chuck will be signing everything when he comes May 1st.
Everything and everyone. Yep. Bring me your kids. I'll sign their foreheads. Yep. It'll be great. Yep.
I'm going to get Chuck's signature tattooed on me.
Oh, dude, I'm all about that. And I'll get a little dick on mine for you.
Oh, dude. All right. Well, I guess no better place to end than there, right? Chuck, thank you so much, man. Be sure to check out his show tonight. What time are you going on your time?
9 o'clock your time.
9 Eastern. So check out Chuck. Chuck, thank you so much for coming on, dude. Best of luck. Can't wait to see you on the 1st. Tell Wendy we said hello.
I absolutely will. Take care, homie. Thank you guys so much. Bud. See you guys soon.
Have a good night.
You too.
So that was my show today, the 38th episode, kind of an editor's day, even though I didn't get to talk much editing with Andrea. But I want to thank my creators today, Andrea Molinari from The Shepherd and his son, both of the co-writers. And then a special shout out to Chuck coming on last minute to talk about Cthulhu Invades Oz, Belial, and the process of editing a comic book. I have been Danny Morales. This has been the Collective Spotlight, and we will be back tomorrow, 5:30 Eastern Time, for a Hump Day happy hour auction. This is not one of the items going up this Wednesday, but this is going up at our final auction of the month on the 28th. So be sure to check that out, all starting at $1. And